Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Today it's me. You're stuck with me. And I'm going to address something that I've heard recently that it's always kind of takes me back a little bit and kind of makes me like reassess how I come across. But I've had several people, including one patient that I have. She said, why are you so humble? Why do you not like boast? And why do you not pound your chest and say, hey, I know this stuff and, follow me type thing? Why are you not and she was saying it in kind of a negative way, like you're self-deprecating a lot. But, I think it's important that people understand where I'm coming from and why sometimes I make fun of myself or I make fun of, my co-hosts and things like that on my other podcast. But part of it's like we really can't take ourselves that seriously sometimes. And there's a great book I'm reading too that just happens that the next day I read this chapter, but it's called Eating from the Fruit from the Tree of Life, and it's by my pastor Mark Hoffman, who's been through a ton in life. And I thought, wow, he does a better job than I can of explaining it. So is pride bad? Well, it just depends how we look at it. So a lot of us will say, hey, I'm proud of my kids. I'm proud of my accomplishments in life. I'm proud of, things that I've built. You want to take pride in taking care of your house and taking care of yourself, and exercising. So that's one thing, of pride. But what I've seen is that pride could be one of the most destructive, if not the most destructive quality that we can have if we're being prideful, arrogant in that way. So, and I promise not to read scriptures, but I'll read a couple here just because it's in Mark's book. But it says, God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. That's James 4:2. So one thing is when you're prideful and you walk around like you have it all together and you want to look like, you have the best house in the neighborhood, you have the best family, you don't have any issues at all. You miss out on some blessings that way. And, so many people that I've seen struggle in life struggle with pride and arrogance that they can do it all on their own. So he says it well. He says, it is humility and it will enrich your life. He says, this is the most important thing you could have is humility. It will enrich your life more than any other thing. It attracts God attention and his favor. And that's one thing that I've noticed in my life. I've doors have opened that shouldn't have opened. I've had people help me that shouldn't have helped me. I've had contacts with people that probably I never should have been in the same room as, but we connected on a human level because I was able to say, hey, look, I don't understand this. One example being Jason Fung. I reached out to him and said, hey, I don't understand this metabolic health stuff. I've been practicing for 18 years. Can you help me? And he goes, sure, Brian. He was nice enough to step out of his comfort zone and help me, give me information, send me studies and all those things. And he got me on a journey that could help other people. The alternative, I could have said, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. It's not working, but I'm going to keep doing it. So many people say, look, I've been doing it for 20 years this way and I'm going to keep doing it. Yeah, but your life's a train wreck. Your marriage is a disaster. Maybe we should change tact a little bit. But so many people, pride keeps them from really enjoying life. He goes on to say that pride is the inclination to look at yourself or to look to yourself rather than to the one who made you. A prideful person is full of himself and keeps him from receiving God's grace because God can't pour into something that is already full, right? Pride makes us boast in our strengths, despair in our weaknesses, and wallow in guilt and shame because pride is focused on us rather than God and his grace or other people around us. So many of us are so self-focused. We worry about our pronouns. What do you call me? How do I want to be addressed? You're going to call me doctor. You're going to call me Mr. or Mrs. or whatever. And so much of that is self-focused. And what I find is the more self-focused people are, the more miserable they are, right? The more that they have to dominate over you or be right in every conversation. All of us know people who are know-it-alls that no matter what the topic is, they have no experience in that area and they'll tell you, look, this is how it is. And it's amazing when you know something and it's been your life experience, or in my case, clinical experience. And I say, well, that's not how it works in real life. It's really amazing how arrogance plays a role. And I would say in medicine, we have arrogance of censorship of saying, hey, if your idea is different than mine, I don't want to hear it, rather than sitting down saying, hey, maybe I'll learn something from you. Maybe you'll learn something from me. But I think that's one thing I've noticed over the last few years is we've lost the ability to be humble and to learn. You know, one of my brothers is very arrogant and he was going to build a doghouse for his girlfriend, and our neighbor was a contractor. So he said, hey, do you want me to show you how to do this? He said, no, I got it. And it's still a joke of our family because it was such a disaster. He ends up cutting off the end of my dad's porch, using up his wood, not asking him first because he was prideful. And so he built this house that was falling apart. It was a total disaster. And he was sitting there with someone who could have helped him and say, hey, do it this way, this way, this way. And he goes, no, I'll just do it myself. So many times, especially as guys, for me, I hate to stop and ask for directions. There's so much things that we're prideful in, and that someone could just help us out. If I'm painting and I've never painted before, just ask the guy who knows how to paint. Say, hey, can you help me? Do you have any tips for me? And they'll give you tons of clinical advice or advice of what they've experienced. So, and what to avoid, mistakes that they've made. And so I'm seeing this in the younger generation of doctors where they're criticizing some of the most published doctors that have ever been, right? That people have published multiple studies, like Professor Noakes. Some kid in medical school who's never treated a patient yet is saying he's doing it wrong. And I always think about it as like the kid who's learning driver's ed will correct their parents, say, hey, you need to be your hands have to be in this position. You're not doing this right. You didn't look in your blind spot. And it's like, well, you'll see. Once you start driving, things change a little bit once you're in the driver's seat. But it's easy when you're not the one that has to run the ship, basically. So and then the other thing that was interesting on the other side of the coin that my pastor brings up is that most people don't realize that low self-esteem is as much of a manifestation of pride as boastfulness, because both reflect a preoccupation with ourselves. One merely focuses on our strength and the other on our negatives. So that's an interesting thing, is that so many of us, we just go through life and we're either the victim everywhere and we're struggling and we can't do anything right and everyone's picking on us. We focus on it's all about us though still, right? And so many people with arrogance, they want to be the only one in charge and they don't want to hear what you have to say. They're already thinking of their argument before you've even spoken. And so as an example, there was a resident I was trying to train, and he was super arrogant. And he walked into the ICU where these nurses have been practicing for 30 years, 25 years. They have tons of experience. They know what they're doing. And, he's barking orders at him, treating him with disrespect. And I said, hey, you know what? These people know way more. You've never treated a sick patient before. They're going to be your biggest allies, So I tried to give him a little bit of wisdom, but of course he wasn't going to listen. And that's the irony of this podcast, is the people who need it the most are the ones who aren't going to listen because they're arrogant. So they go, this guy's not going to teach me anything new. So that's the irony. It's like giving a medicine to someone who's paranoid. They don't want to take it because they don't trust you because they're paranoid. So you can't really help them sometimes. But this young doctor went in and started barking orders and being a jerk to everyone. And so guess who didn't sleep at all for that 3 months that he was in the ICU? Him. Because all the nurses would call him at 2 a.m. Hey, this patient wants face cream. Hey, this person, because they paid him back for his arrogance. So had he been nice and humble, like I was, then the nurses would all save all my stuff for the next morning. Go, Brian, we wanted to let you sleep. We didn't want to bug you. And so I got a lot more sleep than he did because he was being arrogant. So there's a lot of that in medicine. I think over the last couple of years, I've noticed it more and more, because the other thing was the guy was arrogant and it cost some patient mistakes because he did it on his own. and he wasn't going to say, hey, can you help me? The other thing that I see that pride is a problem is with affairs, because guys, especially someone pays them attention and it's about them. They don't think about, hey, how's this going to affect my family? How's this going to affect my kids or my workplace or whatever? And so we become so self-focused that we miss out on what really matters and what's important, or reaching out to someone and saying, hey, I'm struggling with alcohol, or I'm struggling with cookies. And the thing that I've noticed is, doing what I do with metabolic health, is the people who don't show up to our free group meetings are the ones who are struggling the most. And it's pride, because you don't want to say, hey, I'm struggling, I'm having a hard time, I don't know what to do, I don't know what kind of exercise, I feel out of control. But sometimes just talking about it helps. So my people who show up every week are doing the best. They have their life in control, they're listening, they're reaching out, they're supporting others. And it's amazing. If you're prideful, what will happen if you say, hey, I really don't get this, can you help me? And that's how I've lived my life, and I've learned a ton with this podcast and low carb MD. I've learned so much that I can help other people with. But if I already walk in that I have all the answers, I'm not going to be very great in a discussion with someone, because I don't really care what they say if I believe that I'm right. Religion can be the same way. People of a certain faith will say, hey, I'm not listening to anything you say. Or you could say, hey, explain to me why you have reservations about this, right? Why is it that you don't want to kneel down to God? And I think that's an amazing thing. And I kind of look at it as, people in a gang. When you have all your gang there to support you, you could be the toughest guy and you could, be the gunslinger and pull out your knife and do all that. But when you're on your own, things change. And so I think all of us have to reflect on that at some point. Is at some point, we're all going to reach the end of our life, and we're going to be sitting there, and we're not going to have all of our friends and just say, hey, he's an atheist, so I think that's cool. And, all these arguments that you never really looked at. But you're going to have to address that. You're going to have to look and say, what do I really believe? Right. It's not all about me. And so I think that's the thing is, I've seen that with patients who are very arrogant and, come in 45 minutes late for an appointment and then push their way in front of other people, or people who, are always the first in line, always the one, if they get invited somewhere, they'll take the seat and say, I was here first, and let the old lady stand up. All these things are so self-focused. And I've seen that in our society for sure, is that everyone's worried about getting their part. Like, someone else will have to suffer so I can get mine. And in business relationships, and people who, they can't do a deal on a handshake, they'll try to get around the contract or mislead people. And that's all pride and arrogance, And so the people who I see in life who are the happiest are the ones who serve other people. And also, let me make that clear, is some people are serving in church and they're serving here and they're telling everyone how much they're a servant. And, they're that's a pride in itself, where people sacrifice so much and say, I've sacrificed way more than you have, and I've done all these other things. But sometimes if you just do it out of your heart that you want to help people, or you want to do the right thing, or you really want to boost people up, it's really going to make a huge difference. And hopefully with this podcast, other episodes you've heard are these people that they rejoice when their friends do well. They rejoice when their partner gets a new job or someone else wins the award. You go, hey, that's great, knowing that your time is coming. So I want to make it clear that being humble and not thinking of yourself too much. And the other line he said here, which is great, was like, being humble is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less, right? Meaning, like, it's not all about you. And at some point when you realize that, people listening know that your life gets so much better when you realize that serving other people and helping people because you want to, not because it makes you look good, right? Because it says, oh, you're earning your way to heaven or whatever it is. But just being a decent, humble person seems to help that. And so the other thing that's, I've been told is like, oh, you have religion because you're weak. You can't do it on your own. Right. As guys, for some reason, it's that you have to be able to do it yourself and take, if you win the boxing match, it's all about you. And other people say, hey, God help me in this. So I think a lot of us now, our foundations are being shaken. Right. We're seeing like, my 401k's dropped, which mine has. I've seen that. Once your car gets repossessed, once that beautiful wife of yours or handsome husband, something happens to them and they're gone. If your whole worth is wrapped into what it looks like on the outside, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough when tough times hit and you can't say, hey, I'm struggling, right? Our suicide rate right now, I was reading, is through the roof. Our drug use, pornography, all these things are so self-destructive. Alcohol use. It's because so many of us are struggling with anxiety, financial problems, stress. Our health may not be great. We may not be in the marriage or relationship we think we deserve, and we start looking elsewhere. And I think it's so important that we say, "Hey, look, let me count my blessings. Let me be humble in that, because there will be a time. I can guarantee you this, no matter what you believe, if you have no beliefs, there's going to be a time when things are going to hit and it's going to be rough. You're going to get a bad diagnosis, or you're going to lose a family member. And you're going to ask yourself, like, what matters? What's important? I had 3 patients this week say, what really matters in life? I've never thought about spiritual stuff. And it's amazing that they're bringing it up to me as their doctor, but that we could sit and talk about it. So many people are just lost in life, and they've work so hard to do it all on their own strength. But the problem is, when it's on your own strength, is when things don't go right, it's going to destroy your self-esteem. It's going to make you struggle, and you're going to think you're inadequate. But sometimes bad things happen to good people. And these are all questions that we just can't answer. I have friends that try to ask me questions, and I said, yeah, I really can't answer that. Why your son died? I can't answer that question. Why would God allow these things to happen? Or why why is it that bad people go unpunished sometimes? And, that was a reflection of mine yesterday. And I was thinking, you know what? I was thinking, God, how can it be that the corrupt are like destroying innocent people, and all these bad things are happening around us? And Jesus was like, you know what, Brian? Have you seen my story? Right? He suffered all those things, and he was a servant, and he came in. And if you believe in Jesus, that he washed people's feet, and he was a servant, and he did all these things, and spent time uh saying that, hey, it's God within me that's the strength, it's not all me. So anyways, I think these are all things that we need to reflect on. And sometimes it's okay to be weak. Sometimes it's okay to say, hey, I don't know the answer. Sometimes it's okay to say, yeah, I've never been down this road before. I've never parented kids before. I've never run a business. So how do I do it? Ask those people, have the common sense, and be humble enough to say, I don't have all the answers. I think, again, the most dangerous doctors are the ones who have all the answers, and they're not willing to budge, and they're not willing to look at the data or be questioned. The most dangerous parents are the same, the ones who will not, this is the way I've done it, and this is how my granddad did it, so I'm doing it that way. Well, sometimes that doesn't work, and you have to look at the fruit of your labor and what's happening. And sometimes it's okay to be weak. It's sometimes okay to be humble. And again, it's not thinking less of yourself. It's just thinking less about yourself and about what you want right now. And maybe saying, hey, let me help other people, because in doing that, you will get the greatest rewards in life. So I think this is an important message. And I'm so thankful that Mark Hoffman put this down. But again, experiencing grace, experiencing stuff you don't deserve, and being able to say, yeah, I'm weak right now, I'm struggling. Reaching out to a friend. I just did a podcast with a guy who was over 400 pounds, and he documented his entire journey, including mental health struggles online. And it's amazing, because it's so hard to show our scars and our hurts, and that some of us were abused, or some of us were treated poorly, and be able to come through the ashes and rise up. So sometimes in our weakness, we become strong to say, hey, I don't have all the answers. Please help me. That's okay. It doesn't mean you're weak. I could have saved a lot of gas by just stopping and asking someone. But now that I have my little GPS, usually that works for me. But a lot of us don't have that GPS. A lot of us don't, I remember the old days of having to unfold a map and try to put it back together. So what a disaster that was. But a lot of times we just don't have the roadmap, and we have to say, hey, look, I've never been in this journey before. I've never been in this country. I don't know the language, and be able to ask for help and humble yourself. And it would save us so much trouble. And again, so many people want to be their own God, and some people want to have all the answers. And when I was young, I realized, you know what, there's answers I'm never going to know. I think I was 9 years old, and I was laying there looking at the stars one day, and I was thinking, okay, if you had the fastest spaceship, I'm sorry, I'm going to mess up some people's brains right now. If I had the fastest spaceship and I could just go forever as fast as I can, there has to be an end somewhere. But then I realized there can't be an end. So if it's all at the end of our universe in a box somewhere, then what's outside of that box? And if that's in a box, what's outside that box? Where does it start? Where's it end? I'll never know that answer. You'll never know the answer either, right? So I think there's some things that we have to say, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe someone above my pay grade, maybe God knows. I'm pretty sure God would know. So to be so certain that there's not a God is surprising to me. And a lot of people say that. And I just heard an expression yesterday that said that people who understand a little bit of science are atheists, And people who understand a lot of science are believers, right? That you believe someone had to create this thing, and that there is no uh, order out of disorder. Things don't just build themselves, and cars don't just happen. Someone has to think about it and design it, and someone has to put the parts together and all these things. And so for a lot of us, it's saying, hey, what is my part in this whole big picture? Maybe it's a small part, maybe it's a tiny part, but it's still critical, right? If you don't have the guy pumping your gas, or that opens the gas station, then you still can't drive your car. So we need every part of the equation. And I think that's part of why some of the greatest minds I know, including Professor Noakes and Gary Fettke, they're the nicest, most decent, humble people that you've ever met. Jason Fung, Tro Kalasian, when you sit and talk to them one-on-one. And they don't have to pump themselves up because they know they're competent in what they do, and they have the credentials. But so many people have credentials and they go, call me doctor. This is a PhD, and they give you every letter after their name, but they still may be lacking common sense. And I think we're seeing that on our university campuses, where people are chased out just because they have a different message that isn't pleasing to them. And so I think for all of us, I think we can take a step back and say, yeah, I may not agree with you. I may not like what you're saying, but you have the right to say it. And I'll take from you what I can. And so I think being humble in that, your life's going to be that much better. So if you're struggling with pride, I would try to just look at yourself in the mirror and go, okay, where can I humble myself a little bit? Where can I be more kind to my coworkers or employees? Where can I make an impact? And so that's my 2 cents for today. And inspired by some patients talking to me, and also Mark Hoffman's book. Again, it's called Eating from the Tree of Life. It's on Amazon. And there's some great messages, even if you're not a believer and you don't believe the stuff I believe. It's really great wisdom for life. And I think humbling ourselves is always good. And again, not thinking less of ourselves necessarily, but don't take your role so dang serious, but take what you do seriously and say, hey, I want to be as educated as I can. I want to help as many people around me as I can. And I guarantee your life gets better. Those who help and serve and do kind things, and, whatever it is, open the door for someone, or help someone with their groceries if they can't get it in, or go to your neighbor whose husband died and sit down and take her a meal or something like that. All those things are super powerful. And sometimes it takes humbling yourself to be successful in life and happy and content. So count your blessings. And everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Thank you for listening. I hope you gain something out of this. It is outside of my comfort zone and what I normally do, but I think it's really important. I've seen pride break a lot of people down and destroy their lives, and make them bitter and resentful. So plug in when you need to, power down a little bit, and just do the best you can. We're all learning at this. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.